it's more about a challenge, I think, when considering neurodiversity. And it's about how do we treat neurodiversity? How do we not just accept it, but in some cases assist in readying those brains for learning? So you've got a picture on the screen. That's my little boy when he was a little boy, when he was 3, and now he's 16. And he's not here today because this is the first time I've spoken about him in 6 years. I used to talk a lot about him when he was younger, and we were talking about his neuroplastic journey. And as he's aged, I felt that it was no longer appropriate to talk about him as a case because he is a person. But I've made the exception today because I think it's important in this context, and I've not had a chance to talk to adult educators before to speak. He's stashed at school and he'd be happy there, much happier than he would be in this room. I can tell you that. He's reasonably shy. So, early educators focused on the acquisition of facts and knowledge and the delivery of it to a set curriculum. Then late last century, educators shifted their focus to placing the child at the centre of learning, emphasising skills development. Neuroscience is now giving us the next major paradigm shift in education. Now we can go further than placing the child at the centre of learning, and we can now teach to the brain of the student in the classroom. Learning happens not in classrooms, but in brains. The collaboration of neuroscience and education allows teachers to move to a new phase where they can begin to be charged with readying the brain for learning. Current practice doesn't attempt to understand or to treat the cause of learning difficulties. Instead, it relies on established programs which have failed in their ability to treat them at their root cause. Reliance on reader-writers, iPads and technological solutions ignore the brain and its place at the centre of the cause of learning difficulties. From neuroscience, we understand the brain is plastic and learning difficulties can be treated through targeted cognitive therapies. These therapies are based on the individual assessment of a student and provide a progressive series of cognitive exercises to improve the ability of the student's brain to understand, process, and conceptualise. Not all brains are the same, obviously, and child development is not an even and flat road. There are hills and potholes and curves and side streets and dead ends. My son Max began school with very, very little verbal abilities. He spoke a kind of gibberish and was diagnosed with a severe expressive language disorder. And although I resisted the labelling of him for a really long time, that use of this severe expressive language disorder has at times been very helpful along the way. I can list off the other things that were in his potpourri of difficulties, but central to them is auditory processing disorder, some hyperactivity, low muscle tone, hypermobile joints, and quite a bit of dyspraxia. He's always funded to 10 hours teacher aid time assistance per week. While Max received excellent support from his school and his local district health board, neither were aware of or equipped to provide the kind of therapy Max required to make his brain ready for learning. The school was providing a place for Max which was unsuited to him, assessing him against a curriculum which he could not access, and dooming him to regular and routine failing as he progressed through year levels. While our family accepted gratefully the care and compassion of his teachers, we were aware that he would need to look elsewhere and for Max's brain to become ready for learning. On Max's neuroplastic journey, since he was 4, our family has tried 4 different neuroplastic programs from when he was 4 till when he was 12. So to start with, because we were testing it out, we started with the listening program. And we noticed immediately that Max begins to understand what we're asking him to do for the first time. Then we used something called aerobics, and Max began to speak in meaningful sentences. Then we moved to fast for word, and he began to speak in conversation and context. In other words, he was starting to join in with our conversations rather than having a separate one to us. In the second year of fast for word, he was able to tell us a story perhaps of what happened at lunchtime or what happened during the day. He developed memory. And lastly, because Max's problems are severe, we attended the Aerosmith program at Samuel Marsden, where he attended for 4 years from ages 8 to 12. This vastly improved his areas of cognitive weakness, and he has returned to mainstream education with less assistance. You may be wondering why we needed to try 4, and it was just because we knew that they were making a difference, but we needed to keep making a difference. And every program built on the previous work of the other programs. So, characteristics of the programs. The program assesses the student and targets the areas of cognitive weakness based on those assessments. Not all brains are the same, and so the treatment should not all be the same. And I think that's really important if you're assessing a neuroplastic program, to make sure that those assessments are done and that they're regularly monitored, they're adjusted as they progress. Some of them are very blank and don't treat the brain as an individual item. The program should include regular, intensive daily sessions. Neuroplastic change cannot happen in half an hour once a week. It will require commitment from the student and the educator. But crucially, I think for this group, it's important to remember that neuroplasticity happens regardless of age. It's not just a program for children. So neuroplastic programs create long-term change in fundamental ways. The efficacy is hard to judge, and we were talking this morning, Mary, about the lack of empirical evidence in this space and how difficult it is because of that. Research is still very embryonic. Brain imaging is still really just starting out, and how we measure a child's that neurological change from here to here after going through a program is still not really got an empirical basis. However, there are leaps of faith you have to take as a parent, and that was what we chose to do. With Max, since he was 4, we've seen improvements in his ability to understand instructions, to communicate his needs, to remember and speak in rote sentences. He's a really good mimic. loves a good passage, a little phrase that he can return over again and again. At age 9, we started to have an emergent thinker who could create and maintain a simple conversation, apply information to solving problems, could reason and understand, and who was asking questions and beginning to seek answers. At the age of 16, it's hard to distinguish Max's severe communication disorder from his teenage boy reluctance to chat to his mother. There's only so many questions you can ask in a row without starting to feel like perhaps you should ask any more. However, his speech remains flat in tone, as it does when hearing the speech of a person with a hearing problem. So you can still hear that he has the auditory processing disorder that he always had. So we have not cured him. We have simply made his brain more open to the world. As a learner, he's a member of the Supported Learning Centre at his high school, but he attends mainstream classes in mathematics, drama, and digital technology. Written literacy remains a challenge, although he's always been a really good reader. So here he has trouble with speaking and with writing, but he can read. These kids, the diversity is extraordinary. How do you as educators, I don't even know how you begin to unpack those strengths and weaknesses to identify those areas where you can make the best benefit. It's very challenging. Importantly, social interaction for him has become easier. I heard my heart about the need for a friend, because Max still had his first invitation to someone else's house to play about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So those that desire for that neurotypical desire for people to have what we have, Max is perfectly happy where he is and what he's doing. He does not actually require the type of social interaction that we expect and we would demand. I think that's really important to remember. It's very easy to push our anxieties or concerns or wanting people to have the same life that we have. That's not necessarily what's required, I think. He's pretty good at telling us that. What he does have now is increased self-confidence, less sense of failure in mainstream classes. But crucially for us, he now has agency and voice. He can now has self-determination. He can tell us. He can tell us when he's in pain, which he couldn't do previously. He can tell us when he doesn't want to do something, which is frequently. I love Nico's comment about when you don't want to do something. And so you want to have an option for not committing completely. Max is very good at saying, I don't really know if I want to do something. Do you remember Mary? He used to say, I don't know, a lot. He still does. We don't know where our journey with Max is going to take us. We're without doubt that the neuroplastic programs that we have used for Max have greatly enhanced his ability to learn. As a parent of a 16-year-old with special needs, so that's another label you can put on yourselves, I don't look too far ahead into the future. One of the hardest things people ask me is what the future looks like. However, I can imagine the possibility of a driver's license, some sort of independent living, and perhaps when I have my fingers crossed and if perhaps I go in and help him learn how to do it, some employment. I believe that our neuroplastic journey is important to share with others. It should be a major shift in the way our educators think of learning. The barriers of implementing these programs into state schools in New Zealand remain in place, and the best way to access them remains privately. Delaying in offering these in state schools continues to be a significant problem. What we need to understand, and what I said to Select Committee several years ago, was that this delay in implementation of these programs comes at a significant cost. Those with learning difficulties are overrepresented in our unemployment, mental health and prison statistics. In delaying using these programs for children and students in classrooms right now, we are having a significant and direct impact on their future. And I don't believe we can afford to wait. So thank you.